Hello everyone, this is Bobbin Threadbare and welcome back to Weaving Worlds. For today's topic, I'd like to focus on the point where the protagonist meets the setting. One of the big reasons to create your own setting instead of using regular old Earth is because you have the freedom to change it. And if you want your story to be about that change, then you need a protagonist or set of protagonists who want to change the world. And while everyone, even in real life, has some thoughts on how the world or how society could be better, it's not so common to find someone willing to lead the charge. You need a strong motivation to take that kind of risk, but that motivation can come from a variety of places. That's why for today we'll be looking at a variety of inciting incidents and intense feelings that you can use to set up a protagonist's character arc. Number 1. Destroy or capture something important. It's a cliché in the fantasy genre to burn down the protagonist's hometown, if not immediately, then at least before the end of the first act. After all, it's a terrific motivation. Your home is gone, everyone you cared about is dead, and so all at once you have a reason to get revenge on the bad guys, and you've got nothing tying you down anymore. Plus, it's a good tug on the old audience's heartstrings, since most of them also have families and homes. But it's also obvious and not very creative, so maybe you want to steer clear of the cliché, or at the very least, you shouldn't use it every single time. Instead, consider a precision strike, so to speak. Think about how Spider-Man lost his Uncle Ben, but not his Aunt May, or how John Wick lost his dog, and that was simply the last straw. Or maybe the thing that's important isn't destroyed, but captured. Then the motive changes from revenge to rescue, which is generally a more positive motivation. Mario needs to rescue Princess Peach from Bowser, and while Luke Skywalker leaves home to get revenge on the Empire for killing his family, he later changes his motivation to rescue Princess Leia. And that's another important point about motivations. They can always change, even in the middle of a story. Number 2. Give them nothing to lose. Hurting or destroying something is more than enough to create a motivation, but sometimes a person can lose everything. Their home, their job, their family, their reputation, everything except the clothes on their back and the determination in their heart. At times like that, a person can do some pretty crazy things, because they no longer have a reason to stop. They might fail, they might die, but there's no point in stopping because there's nothing left to lose. This sort of motivation is good for when you need a protagonist who will do some questionable things to get what they want, since they no longer have a reason to play nice or respect other people. You can also use this motivation as a reason for why a protagonist would want to go up against impossible odds, since they don't care about the consequences. And if you want to change this motivation midstream, all you have to do is give them something new to care about. Number 3. Have them get in too deep. Sometimes a protagonist doesn't realize that they've stumbled into an adventure until it's too late for them to back out. Maybe a kid finds a magic stone that gives him incredible powers, but an evil space tyrant wants those powers, and he decides to kill the kid without bothering to ask politely. At that point, the kid is committed to fighting the evil tyrant, because he's gonna die if he doesn't. Or maybe a guy is innocently walking through an airport terminal and gets swept up into a spy thriller because one of the spies uses him as bait. A story that features an accidental protagonist can be fascinating. They have no emotional stake in the plot, but they still have to go along with it because they would suffer if they stopped. This could make them panicky or resentful, or both, or else they could be completely oblivious to the real stakes of the conflict. Either way, this motivation is also easy to change. Simply explain what's really going on to the protagonist and give them a chance to leave. If they stay, it's because they have a new motivation. Number 4. Invent a specific goal. I went over this option in detail in another video, constructing a hero-centric narrative. The idea is to make the protagonist the active force that's driving the story, instead of a reactive force that responds to something the antagonist does. Maybe the protagonist is trying to change the status quo, and the antagonist wants things to stay the same. Or maybe the protagonist accidentally hurts the antagonist, and the antagonist is someone who holds a grudge. You can watch my other video for more details, but the main thing is that the protagonist wants to accomplish something, and this naturally leads to conflict. Sometimes it's to help other people, sometimes it's purely for personal reasons, but either way, a goal is a good core motivation. And if you want to change it, you can have the villain do something terrible that causes the protagonist to set aside their goal and become reactive. Number 5. Create friends who care. Something I like about Japanese RPGs is that a lot of them feature at least one character who has no personal stake in the main conflict, but tags along with the party anyway. It's a good way to show that the whole world doesn't revolve around the personal drama of the main characters, and that sometimes people want to help out, not because they feel obligated to, but because they see someone in trouble who could use some assistance. And so, while the primary protagonist has some deep, meaningful reason to engage with the plot, their friends might just be along for the ride. And like all of the other motivations, this one can also change by simply introducing a more personal aspect of the plot that affects the friends. Number 6. Make it a family matter. Our strongest emotional ties are the ones between family members, and that can include blood relatives, found families, and lovers. I already mentioned how losing a loved one, whether through death or captivity, can be a strong motivator, but that's not the only way that family can motivate a protagonist. Perhaps it's not the direct loss of a family member so much as the threat of loss that drives the protagonist. They might have a sick child who needs medicine, and the plot of the story is to get that medicine. Or maybe they want a better life for their children, and so they try to flee the country with them. You can also use family members as antagonists. The relationship between Luke and Darth Vader is a classic example, but in that case, the familial relationship is incidental. The main conflict of the original Star Wars trilogy is between the Rebellion and the Empire. Something else you can do is make that relationship the source of the conflict, like how Cinderella's stepmother hates her and keeps her away from the prince's ball. And then the way you can change motivations when family is involved is by resolving and refocusing. The sick child gets her medication, but something has to be done about the corrupt pharmaceutical company. Or the family members talk out their differences and band together against the real villain. Number 7. Give them a job to do. Sometimes it's not personal, it's business. Maybe one of the protagonists is hired by the others to participate, like Han Solo during the original Star Wars movie. Or maybe the main protagonist is a spy or double agent, and it's their job to disrupt the status quo on behalf of a foreign interest. Or else the villain is disrupting the status quo, and the protagonist is part of the armed forces or the police. In cases like these, it's the protagonist's professional duty to get involved with the story, regardless of their personal opinions. And this is another motivation that's easy to change. A character might start out as professional, but as time goes on, they get personally invested. Motivation is essential for any character in any genre. If your protagonist isn't invested in the main conflict, then your audience won't be invested either. So make sure you ask why your characters do the things they do, and come up with some solid reasons for them to get active. Thanks for joining me again for today's journey into Weaving Worlds. Please like, share, and subscribe because that raises my visibility here on YouTube. Check out my other stuff if you have some time, support me on Patreon if you have some money, and I hope I'll see you again for the next video.